Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. Today is September 13th, 2025. Let's talk about some bets on the board right now that I think are compelling NFL futures. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Let me also point out, too, a theme that I have here online. These are uncertain economic times, right? I personally believe that the stock market is extremely overvalued and that we're looking at volatility. I also believe that interest rate cuts aren't going to save the housing market. Not only that, rates might actually go up as creditors are going to demand premiums. So it's very important for people to invest in items that are going to retain value. That's a theme here. So I believe in gold, I believe in silver. Let me name a watch company, and granted, it's expensive. These are luxury watches. But just understand that Patek Philippe watches are among the best performing assets in the luxury watch market, often appreciating significantly over time. Models like the Nautilus or Aquanaut frequently sell at auctions for multiples of their retail price due to scarcity and demand. I'm going to tag some watches. They'll be available for purchase here in the links on the video. Purchases aren't required, obviously. The price will be a draw dropper for most. It's just an opportunity to invest in an asset you can actually use, right? Patek watches you can use to tell time that are going to retain their value better than many assets. Okay, let's talk NFL. Let me just say there's certain teams that I believe have shown who they are already this year. First, let me just say I believe very few teams in the National Football League, and I mean very few, have a realistic opportunity to win the Super Bowl. Understand, the team that just won the Super Bowl, the Eagles, were actually in the Super Bowl recently, right? Same quarterback, same group of receivers, many of the same players were just in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, 2 years before their recent victory. And of course, the team they played against, Kansas City, was actually the team they played against in this past Super Bowl, right? Of course, in the AFC, understand, while the Eagles in the NFC have made the Super Bowl twice recently, just understand only one team in the AFC has made the Super Bowl over the last 3 years. Right now, we're living in a bit of an illusion. You think many teams have a shot, but yet it's the same core set of teams that repeatedly end up in Super Bowls. So let me just point out, right now, I believe you can pretty much cross off 2/3 of the league. Right now, I would say realistically. And some years there'll be outliers, but realistically, you're really left with about 12 teams that have a realistic shot of getting to a Super Bowl. Let me also point out, too, that the NFL has a lot of volatility. We're seeing that with Austin Eckler of the Commanders out for the year now, right? He's not the only Commander who's out for the year. Somebody else on that team had a quad injury. We understand that there are going to be players who get hurt, who can't play for major stretches. I'm astonished at how injured the 49ers are. Their receiving core depleted. Even Brock Purdy is out for this coming game, right? And understand the Niners have only played one game this year. and they're incredibly banged up. So, the Green Bay Packers, folks, they're on the short list of teams with a realistic shot of making the Super Bowl. Right? They're 2-0. Let me point out they're going off at 7-1, same odds as the Eagles right now, the defending champion. We saw rival J.J. McCarthy, quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings, look terrible through 3 quarters. I know we're all hot and bothered over that 4th quarter. But folks, I don't believe J.J. McCarthy, as talented as Minnesota is, I don't believe J.J. McCarthy has enough experience to guide that team to a Super Bowl, right? I think Green Bay, if you look at their schedule, you'll realize that this is a team that's probably going to be 5-1. Let's talk about the games briefly. Their next game's against the Browns on the road. Then they play Dallas on the road. Then they get a bye, which will help them integrate Micah Parsons more into that defense. Then they play the Bengals. Now that's an interesting game, but understand, that's a home game for them. Right? I would argue that there's a distinct possibility that after the Bengal game, the Green Bay Packers are 5-0. Right? Their next game's against Arizona. Then they play a challenging game on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Right? After that, their next game, the Carolina Panthers. That's going to be at home. Then they play a challenging game at home against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think Green Bay after this stretch at most is going to have 2 losses. That's if everyone stays healthy. They have the full package. They have the wide receivers. I know Jaden Reed's banged up, but they have the wide receivers. They have the running back, Josh Jacobs. I'll agree their defense isn't matching the offense. But I would also argue that they're playing some offensively blessed teams. Right, their last win was over the Commanders. So I think Green Bay at 7-1 here is compelling value. It's September 13th, folks. Folks, I don't think you're going to get better odds on Green Bay, perhaps again this season, given this schedule. Right? Let me also add, too, that there's no shame in my game. I'll bet on a team that I think's not going to win it all if the odds are compelling, because part of my future strategy is hedging. The Lions, because they lost week 1 to this Green Bay team, the Lions right now are going off at 22-1. Where else are you going to get an offense like this at these odds? Right? I don't believe in Chicago. I don't believe in Minnesota. I've grabbed the taste of the Lions at 22-1 to win it all. Of course, this team was the 1 seed in the NFC last year. The 1 seed. Where else are you going to get a 1 seed in week 2 at 22-1? Folks, those are the odds right now at Bovada.lv. Let me also add that I believe the best value on the board in terms of futures are the Los Angeles Chargers. Folks, you're still getting them at 22-1. Right? This is a team coached by Jim Harbaugh. I want you to look hard at their defensive numbers from last year. In fact, all you have to do is look at the points they gave up last year. Also, take a hard look at Justin Herbert's low number of interceptions in the regular season last year. I understand there are those who believe that Herbert is just another version of Lamar Jackson. In other words, great in the regular season, makes mistakes in the postseason. Right? I understand that. There are those who believe that Herbert can't win big games. My point to you is if you're in the futures market and if your bets make it to the playoffs, you're cooking with gas because at that point, you're looking at heavy leverage, right? Again, the Lions 22 to 1, the Chargers 22 to 1. You're looking at heavy leverage. You should be able to hedge and do things in the postseason. I'm not here vouching for Herbert or Lamar Jackson in the postseason, right? But I do believe the Chargers get there, and of course, they'd be coming out of arguably the toughest division in football. Also, another spectacular bargain on the board right now. Aaron Rodgers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, 35 to 1. Right, folks? They made the playoffs last year without Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has already had some big chunk plays with DK Metcalf. Right? The Steelers, Mike Tomlin falls out of bed and he's above 500. Right? I don't understand why the Steelers are going off at 35 to 1. That makes no sense to me. I understand the Ravens are in the division. I understand the Bengals are in the division. You know what I believe about the Bengals. They don't have the defense to compete at the highest level. Right? And of course, Tomlin's one of the few who actually holds his own against the Ravens. So, those are the ideas I have for futures this morning, September 13th, 2025. Let me also say this too. The futures market remains open deep into the season, right? But the time to get bargains is now, right? You really want to jump out and grab the bargains before the market adjusts. I know 7 to 1 on an NFL futures doesn't sound that enticing. It does when you look at how close Green Bay is to walking off with the NFC, right? This is a team, Jordan Love has made the playoffs multiple times. Understand, last year in the playoffs, the team they lost to were the eventual champion Philadelphia Eagles, right? Let me also say, in terms of basketball, and it's important, one of my sleeper teams this coming year, I believe I have action on them already, were the Los Angeles Clippers, right? The team looks loaded. While they're older, certain guys gave breaks to the team. Bradley Beal could have signed for more elsewhere. He signed with the Clippers. The Clippers were very well positioned to hold their own in the West, right? And I understand the Western Conference, they are the conference of the defending champion OKC Thunder, who I do feel have the potential to be a dynasty, right? They would have to be the favorite over Houston, in my opinion, to win it all this year. But I thought the Clippers were an intriguing bet. Folks, because of really spectacular reporting by Pablo Torre, we now know that the situation involving Kawhi Leonard's even worse than I had imagined. In an earlier video, I talked about the bad optics. I talked about, the possibility of them being sanctioned by the league just for the carelessness of the optics. Some company having an endorsement deal with Kawhi Leonard where Leonard didn't have to do anything for the money. Right, and of course, the Clippers, Steve Ballmer was investing in that company. Now we're finding out that a Clipper co-owner invested in the company, and the company almost immediately thereafter transferred the money to Kawhi Leonard's account. Right, and of course, Ballmer himself gave $10 million more to the company than was initially thought, right? So you have a situation where you have this company that has the appearance of a shell company, being used to avoid the league salary cap. So, what's being discussed? Understand, owners are up in arms. It's hard to imagine a more competitive group than these professional team owners, right? So, other owners are up in arms. There is a precedent involving an earlier Joe Smith deal where Kevin McHale, the GM for that team, had to take an unpaid leave of absence. Um, you know, uh, the team had to give up 3 first-round picks. They initially agreed to give up 5. I guess the league dialed it back to 3. There were other fallouts and stuff like that. There are those in the league who want the Clippers to give up a bunch of first-round picks. Let me point out that, this is a team, as you could imagine, that already gave up a lot of first-round picks to get Paul George, right? The people in OKC are extremely grateful to the Clippers because they ended up with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who now has not only won scoring titles, but he's won an MVP, and of course OKC has won an NBA championship, right? So just to understand, there are those who want the Clippers to be forced to give up even more first-round picks, right? There are also those who want the Kawhi Leonard salary voided, the contract voided, but they want it to count against the Clippers salary cap. Now, I'm someone who was raised watching a highly dysfunctional team win 3 World Series in a row. If you remember the early 70s, you might remember the Oakland A's. Right? Those guys couldn't stand each other. They were the best team in baseball, and somehow they made it work. They had a guy named Sal Bando who had some of the best leadership skills I've ever come across, right? And he held parts of that team together, right? Their owner was Charlie Finley. One thing all of the players seemed to agree on was that Charlie Finley was terrible, right? Well, just understand, that's rare. That's extremely rare. Most of the time, when you see this level of dysfunction, and understand the sense of betrayal Clipper players should have, right, or likely have. Brock Lopez, he's a veteran. He's later in his career. He signed with the Clippers. This was his opportunity for one more run at a title. Bradley Beal, same thing. And then, of course, you come to find out that, the team has been involved in multi-million-dollar transactions that are now being scrutinized by the league. Right? Ballmer, of course, according to reports, invested $50 million in this company that looks like it might have been a shell company. Of course, the company's bankrupt now. They were taking money from Paul to pay Peter. The Clipper version is becoming hard to reconcile. Ballmer, of course, is one of the wealthiest owners in the NBA. That places him under greater scrutiny since it is a salary cap league. There's concern that he might be trying to buy a championship, right? And so just understand, the situation with the Clippers really takes a lot of the value out of a futures play on them, right? The timing also is terrible. It's September 13th. The season's going to start in a few weeks. This might drag out. Who knows what else reporters are going to find out about what happened, right? So I'll concede the Clippers are not as attractive a play as they were before this scandal broke. A lot of value has been drained out of that futures pick. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.